I find it ironic that the tool of feminism and the feminists that employ it is by far the most odious form of oppression, not just for men, but for women as well. Now, don't get me wrong, men suffer far more under the iron curtain of Marxist feminism, but for some odd reason, women seem to be more miserable than ever. And that's because the worst thing Western women could have done is to bog themselves down in the tar pits chasing the feminist fantasy that speaks to the very worst parts of the female psyche. Indeed, the entire reason that women have been such a privileged class throughout history is because only the good parts of her nature were displayed openly in society for everyone to see. Feminism, for the first time possibly in recorded history, has allowed Western women to show their true nature, and it's the worst possible thing they could have done for themselves because now the physical beauty of women comes as a double-edged sword of documented and well-known unbridled greed, manipulation, and toxicity. And not since the days of Samson and Delilah have men been so keenly aware of the destruction and havoc women can visit upon them. And so now, women can no longer fetch the admiration and devotion of men in any meaningful way. Men aren't amazed or awestruck when we look at women. Men are suspicious and cautious and frankly want as little to do with women as possible. And when men want as little to do with something as possible, we strip down our interaction with it to the necessities, which means that men generally only want to be around women for as long as it takes to fuck them. And feminism and the women who practice it are to blame, not men. Feminism made women absolutely unbearable to be around and impossible to form lasting bonds with, and so by default, men categorized you as nothing but the very sex objects feminists claim the patriarchy labeled you as. That's why the Western woman is so intent on making sure everybody notices her outfit that shows just enough ass and tits for plausible deniability. At work, on the street, in the supermarket, at the DMV, at Blockbuster, and everywhere else. Because sex is all they are. They have nothing else. Ass and tits and painted up faces that make them look like clowns and heels that make them look taller than what they really are. That's all they have left. Now, some of the more perceptive Western women are starting to realize the size and scope of the trap they've been tricked into laying for themselves, but it really doesn't matter whether they see it or not, because for the first time, men are on the precipice of adopting a line of thought that sticks a collective middle finger in the faces of Western femdom as a whole and tells them that this time, you're digging yourselves out of your own mess. The manginas that haven't figured out how much the very women they grovel to despise them aren't going to save you. You may have government catching you with their safety nets, but in reality all they can really do for you is throw more money at the symptoms of your misery. The feminist governments in the West are so good at hiding the fact that they're such a huge part of the cause of the Western woman's sickness that she believes government to be the cure for it. The Western skank isn't going to be saved by the hordes of doctors scripting her more antidepressants than ever, and she isn't going to be saved by going to church and expecting men to believe that that makes them somehow cleansed of the stench of the long list of men in her past. God may forgive your degeneracy, but men still know what you are, what you've done, and more importantly, who you've done, so you'll have to excuse us if we really aren't in the mood to accommodate reformed whores that want to be housewives. But even more than that, men don't even want housewives anymore. Because after a half-century of feminism, the only real result I can see is that women have lost their luster and retain only a fraction of the appeal they held in the days of fabricated oppression and patriarchy. And the worst part for them is that the fraction of appeal they've managed to hold on to, i.e. their pussies, depreciates in value with age and with use by other men. It's truly a sad state of affairs for Western women, but I can't say I really feel sorry for them, and that's because there's a new species of man emerging from the primordial ooze of the gender war, the post-feminism man, a type of man that terrorizes feminists because he refuses to serve, he refuses to bow, and he does what he wants to do. The post-feminism man isn't worried about pleasing women because he sees any women that isn't pleased with him as insignificant. He has a hair-trigger mechanism ingrained into every fiber of his being that simultaneously and reflexively identifies and detaches him from any female he's involved with that gives him even one iota of feminist bullshit. He doesn't uphold, maintain, or pursue relationships. He's seen enough relationships to know that the ship is sinking. He isn't a partisan. He understands the futility of believing that the White House or the halls of Congress or Parliament or wherever his politicians conduct business are anything other than the ground zero epicenters of feminist power and influence. The post-feminism man is a nice guy, thug, a bad boy, or an educated man, or whatever. He isn't concerned with providing for or banging child support obsessed baby mamas, and he recognizes these two groups of men as nothing more than two warring factions of men grandstanding and vying for access to used up pussy. He's not a race, he's not a sperm donor, he's not an ATM machine, or anything else. The only thing that the post-feminism man irrefutably is and will be is what he's always been, just a man, ready and willing and fully equipped to withstand and confront Marxist feminism on all of its fronts.